All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the workshop of the Board of County Commissioners for May 20th. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up is an Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, OREC, plan presentation with RPI Consulting. Gabe, Preston, and Michelle Furi, and James Dietrich. Come on down, or wherever you want to start at.
So again with this, we have Gabe Preston, RPI Consulting, who has done the outdoor recreation study itself. Also, we have Michelle Furi with us today, and she is leading us through the Monolores Coalition. And I thought it'd be good to have both parties here together because there's really good nexus on this, and we'll be using the Monolores Coalition to try to help roll this out to the public. So anyway, I thought it'd be a good time to kind of talk a little bit about how this would fit together.
Sure. Okay. Very good.
You'll just have to push the button to turn the mic on. There you go.
Okay, can you all see, do you see the first slide of the presentation?
Mhm.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep.
Good. All right. Well, I think, I don't think I got a chance to thank you all for awarding RPI this project. So I wanted to start with that. I definitely appreciate the award. It's been a while, and it's a little bit overdue of a thank you, but it's the first time to get in front of you all. I really enjoyed this project, have enjoyed it. And I know that's not why you hired a consultant, so that we can enjoy ourselves, but I enjoyed it, and we got out in the community a lot. We were out doing the intercept survey most of the summer, last summer, and I grew up part-time here in Cortez. My folks split up, and so I lived in Durango, but I was every other weekend and summers and holidays and that sort of stuff in Cortez. So, you know, riding my bike out there in Boggy Draw before, like, when you just would get lost until you found another gravel road. But what I really enjoyed about this project was being out there and meeting some of the folks that live in Montezuma County. It's changed a lot. The kind of people you bump into out there, especially at trailheads and that sort of thing. A lot of those types of folks weren't around 20 years ago. But they treated us really well. Everybody, especially the locals, they were really polite to us, and nobody turned us away, really, without a good reason, you know. So they treated us very well, and one of the things I wanted to share with you all is like this intense pride of being a resident of Montezuma County. So that was one of the questions we asked everybody: are you a resident of Montezuma County? And the residents of Montezuma County were like, oh yeah, we're residents of Montezuma County, and there's a lot of pride in that. So I think that's a good sign for this county. It's changing, but people are really proud to be here. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through the methodology. This presentation is going to take a little bit. So, you know, I don't know, 40 minutes or something like that, just because there's quite a bit to unload. But I want to go through the methodology and our logic with this project, so you kind of can keep track of where we are as we go through it. We began with a supply and demand analysis based on information that we had at hand. So on the supply side, we did an asset inventory where we really listed all the outdoor recreation destinations, I guess, and the heritage sites that people go to most often, and we listed all that. Oh, also the businesses, you know, the businesses that are directly involved in outdoor rec. So we made a business and outdoor recreation business inventory, and that's in that appendix. I think it's the first appendix 1. And we also did a demand side assessment using existing data. So there's quite a bit of data out there available from the state of Colorado Tourism Office, And that statewide data is useful, and it's something worth keeping up with over time, because they renew it almost every year. And what I've learned from working around the state is that statewide, the Long Woods International, which we cite a lot in that original demand side assessment, that's about visitors to state of Colorado, and it's a national survey. So they're finding people that visit Colorado through a national survey, and you learn a heck of a lot about visitors to Colorado. And while we're a lot different in southwestern Colorado, us residents down here compared to, Huerfano County or somewhere over on the Front Range, our communities are a lot different. The visitors are very similar. Tourists that come to Colorado are very, very similar. So you can use that statewide data. That's a take home from this, and continue to sort of use that. It's a lot cheaper. State just posts it on the internet. So that gave us, that was a part of the build up to this. And we also did a series of interviews of kind of key people in outdoor recreation. So, the rec planners for BLM, Forest Service, the trails group leaders, the Canem manager, folks like that are directly involved in outdoor rec. So 15 or 20 interviews, and that gave us enough grounding to have a couple of meetings. So we had a presentation that we could kind of prime the pump with, and so we had a meeting in Dolores, and then a similar kind of duplicate meeting at the fairgrounds. And the meeting in Dolores had great turnout. The one at the fairgrounds had good turnout, and we learned a lot from those interviews and those meetings. This is where we started to get the sense that pursuing outdoor recreation as a deliberate economic opportunity is nuanced here, and something that we want to be careful with and be thoughtful about. So one of the common sentiments from the community meeting was, understanding that this is an economic opportunity that we're gonna, that is worth pursuing. People did not want to mess up the things that they care about most, the places that they care about most. And so it's a balancing act between growing this industry and sort of maintaining quality of life here for the people that live here. So that was very common sentiment that came out of the meetings. Some people just don't want any change, right? That's a limited set. They want it to be exactly the way it was when they moved here, and so that's out there. I mean, we heard it. I'm sure you all have heard it before too. But mostly it's like, yeah, we get it. This is an industry, but let's be careful and be thoughtful about what we're doing. So that gave us, that ran into a whole bunch of data collection. We didn't really have any specific data for Montezuma County on how much recreation is being used here, or it hadn't been organized in a useful manner. So we set out to find every bit of outdoor recreation use data that we could get our hands on. And there's quite a bit out there. BLM has been counting individual trail uses on all the busy trails for like 5 years. So we found out about that, got all that information. Forest Service does road counts. They're not as good about trail counts, but almost everything they have is accessed by roads. So we got their road counts. They also count boat launches and campground use and other factors as well. Colorado Parks and Wildlife counts. They have gate counts for the state, for Mancos State Park and other data. The National Park Service, they do their own whole studies like this pretty periodically, frequently. So we were able to get into some of that information. But we couldn't, the only way to really find out who it is out there recreating on your trails and reservoirs and roads in Montezuma County was to go out there and intercept survey folks. And that, basically it's just that. We're out there at trailheads. We see somebody unloading some equipment, pulling stuff off their trailers. We go up and ask them if they'll take the survey. And so that's how we did it. Almost 400 surveys we collected that way over the course of last summer. So that intercept survey, there is a couple key points that thing did. One, it allowed us to tell, okay, how many people, what's the percentage of users on Montezuma County recreation assets that are visitors versus locals. and how much money are they spending, right? So those are the two kind of key points, and we'll talk more about that. But that gave us the ability to do the visitor spending and economic impact analysis. That's the most tangible economic impact of outdoor recreation. You have visitors coming, they spend money, that has multiplier effects in the economy, so that's a big part of the study. And then we had everybody, so we asked the locals, you know, if on a Saturday morning James decides that he's going to go walk his dogs on Presculp's Trail or something like that, that doesn't do much for the economy. It's great for James, but it doesn't do much different than if he just watched The Simpsons at home. But if it's a visitor from Albuquerque doing that, they spend money, so that has a big impact. But if somebody is living in Albuquerque and they decide they want to move to Montezuma County because of the recreational opportunities here, that has a real impact. That has a major impact. So we asked that question: when you know, how long ago did you live here? Leading up to it, when you moved here, did outdoor recreation have an effect on your decision to move here? So that's how we started to get at other ways that outdoor recreation affects the economy here. And then by that point, we had a lot of ideas from the public involvement, the interviews, the communications that we had. We had a lot of ideas for projects, things that we could work on in the outdoor recreation space, I guess, public, you know, potentially public projects. We had like 25 or something of them. And at that point, we had this data, all the use data and the economic and spending data. And so we could kind of evaluate that list of possible projects objectively and narrow it down to a top 5. So we actually created scoring criteria, narrowed the list of 20 or so down to 5 projects, and created implementation plans for 5 of those projects. And that's kind of the culmination. So next slide. We're just going to keep rocketing. If you all want to have something to say, just cut right in. Cut me off. I won't take events. So this is some of the use data. And that we get into metrics here. Uses is one person, one time, one place. So, and all this is annual. These statistics are annual. So as we go through. So this is like a summary table of all the use that we were able to measure. And one thing I want to point out is this was, I think, an interesting finding for me. So you see Mesa Verde, like their average use is about 500,000 a year, 500,000 uses a year. Okay, so that's the biggest single line item. But if you take the forest roads and trails, the canyons of the Ancients Visitor Center, BLM roads and trails, you're in that same order of magnitude very quickly. Like, so the non-Mesa Verde assets out there, that adds up to a lot, right? Mesa Verde is still, in terms of attracting visitors and bringing people in the door, it's still the big kid on the block, but it is not the only kid on the block. Mm-hmm. You know, there's fully half of your outdoor recreation tourism driven by these other assets that you have in the county. So I think that was an important finding, and something that's probably changed over time.
In that Forest Service trails and roads, did that include the main road, Dolores Norwood Road? Do you know?
We did not. What we did, that there was some tricky areas with that, and so like we definitely got the Boggy Draw network in that, but there's some pass-through traffic on the Norwood Highway.
Yeah.
And so what we tried to do was find the ways in, and I'm not good on my road numbers, but we, you know, the main road into Boggy Draw, like we definitely had the entrance and the exit of those, because there's counts on either side of that. With the west La Platas, you know, there's like 3 or 4 different ways into that. And so this Forest Service wisely puts counters in those entrances. And those are the counters that we mostly, we would focus the counts on the funnels and then leave the stuff inside alone, because you're probably double counting at that point. So, you know, in that sense, it's kind of an estimate, but that is the biggest. I mean, you go up there, that's the busiest place other than Mesa Verde in Montezuma County outdoor recreation. Transfer, whew, on a Saturday up there, like you can see really easily just hanging out up there for the day how you get to these numbers. And like 234,000, that's a lot of, in terms of, you know, in dollars, it's not much anymore. But in terms of individual uses on outdoor recreation, it's a lot. It is a lot. Like Browns Canyon, all of Browns Canyon, all the rafting that goes on the Arkansas River, famous. That's like 500,000 people. The whole thing, from all the way, Leadville all the way down. So this is like a lot of use. Next slide. So drilling into the details, I'm going to move pretty quickly here. Looking at BLM roads and trails, you know, most of the use on trails are the ones that you know about. Sand Canyon and Phil's World, for sure. There's so much out there in the BLM inventory that is just barely used. I mean, if you like those OHV trails at the entrance to McKimmel Canyon, that's, you know, it's like 800 uses a year or something like that. They have counters out there. So there's like huge capacity in certain parts of this system. There's parts of it that are incredibly popular and incredibly busy. There's parts of it that barely get touched. And that's kind of the take home from the BLM. But also this adds up to a lot of use. You know, 76,000 users, that's a lot.
So let me ask you a question there, because we were on part of that BLM property just recently, going down there looking at a different project. Is it because most people think that because of Canham that it is just shut off?
Why don't they go down there? Is that
Well,
the
that's
question?
what I'm saying, because I think
Yeah.
most people are still under the impression, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that it's just not accessible at all.
I don't know.
And there are OHV trails down there. If you pull up or get their map, I mean, it's pretty well delineated that you have these, but the average person or most people, obviously Sand Canyon is super close, 12, 13 miles away, and Fields World is just a couple miles away, but you don't hear a lot out on the BLM property out towards Canham on those OHV trails, and I'm wondering if it's just because people think that they're cut off, because every once in a while you run into a gate. And it's just like, well, can you access it or can you not? And I think a lot of me as a local person, it's like what I used to do 30 years ago as a young man, very young man.
Before the turn of the century?
Yeah, you could go out there and ride everywhere. And since Canham was created, it's kind of, I think that thought of, well, everything is just shut off. So I'm curious.
It was shut off for a while,
Yeah.
because
But-
according to the proclamation, there is no mechanized off-road travel. That's what the proclamation said. Now, they changed their definition of a road so that they could put bicycles up Sand Canyon. They changed the definition of the road. That's what happened, because it happened when I was here on the commission before. But I don't know how many of those they actually did. Do you know, James, how many places they actually opened up like that, changed the definition of that so that you could access that? That may be part of what you're talking about.
And I'm just curious, when you say 800 a year, that area out there is huge. It's, I don't even know how many acres are out there, but
It's massive.
it's
Yeah.
huge. It's
Massive.
super
Yeah, I
massive.
think that's it's a question I don't necessarily have the answer
Okay.
to, but I do have some suggestions later on about, because where we arrived with this is, I'm going to give you a preview. Where we arrived with this, with the Canham and the low levels of use out there, is it's a good match with how people feel. Like your citizens, they don't necessarily want us to be marketing Phil's World or Boggy Draw or Transfer. You know, the places that are already pretty busy that all the locals really like as well. They weren't, you know, those are the places that I think your locals are kind of protective of. They don't necessarily, I didn't run into as many people that necessarily feel that way about Canham, locals. And you do get, there's a higher percentage of visitors out there. So we're recommending like market for visitor use out there. Visitors are interested in it. It's there. The BLM is pretty much on board with more use. I mean, that's their mentality is like they've got Painted Hand all fixed up and they've been making investments. So it's kind of a good match and a good opportunity. But we have an implementation plan along that
Okay.
line. So
All right.
I want to make the
I'll
surprise
let you
there.
go on.
Next slide, Travis. The visitor center gets good use. It got, hammered during COVID for occupancy restrictions. I'm sure it was purely that because they went almost right back up, in 2022 to normal use. But that's a lot of use too. That's this visitor center, and almost all those people use that little trail up to the Escalante Pueblo. Next slide. Just kind of touring through some of this stuff. So these are the Forest Service use estimates. We kind of talked through these already. A lot of it is up there a lot of your use is up there in the West La Platas and the Boggy Draw. So those are busy places. And now we have some numbers to that to some degree. Okay, next slide. The Forest Service campgrounds, that does, it doesn't add up to much. Average, 3,700 visitor parties just in the 3 campgrounds. But that's still so that's 3,700. That would actually matter. It would show up on a chart if we were doing hotel occupancy analysis here. That's a significant amount of overnight visitors that those Forest Service campgrounds are contributing to. Next slide. The boat ramp, these are both the boat ramps, House Creek and the main boat ramp. McPhee just isn't that busy. That's just not a lot of launches for a reservoir that side with 2 big boat ramps. And I spent a lot of time there at the main boat ramp. It's not very busy. The boat ramps that get on the Animas River in Durango are way busier than that. So lots of capacity to spare at McPhee was my take. Next slide. Now, one thing that's gotten really popular, and this is in there's all this science behind outdoor rec that's oriented towards selling people retail goods. So we like to use that information, the Outdoor Recreation Industry Association, et cetera. And with the participation rates and kind of triangulating with several different data sources, we were able to estimate that there's about 30,000 annual just paddle sports users. So those plastic kayaks and the stand-up paddle boards and all that stuff, very popular. That's a growth sport. And we have some interesting observations about projects that we could do to sort of make that more accessible. But there's a lot of opportunities for that in Montezuma County. So it makes sense that there's a lot of use in that space because you've got Summit and Pruitt and I always forget one. When I list all the reservoirs, I can't actually ever remember all of them because there's enough of them, Totten, so on. So next slide, please. And then you've got your big facilities, Mancos State Park. That's no small potatoes, 32,000 users. And those are people making reservations mostly from somewhere else. Those are mostly not locals. The Mesa Verde National Park, Hovenweep, okay, that's not in Montezuma County, that's actually in Utah. But we have, there's so much crossover, and the National Park Service has documented that people going to Hovenweep stay in Montezuma County, that's the only exception of one that we sort of called Montezuma County's that's not actually yours. We left the Dolores River, the Dolores from the Whitewater below the dam, we left that out because that is not as clear. We connected. We couldn't find clear data connections. We think it is, but it's not. We couldn't actually demonstrate it. Next, two slides down. So we're starting into thinking about what this means from an economic standpoint. We found out there during the warm season, right? We didn't run these intercept surveys in the winter. That'd be hard, but probably something that needs to be done. Almost 56% of the people we ran into out there, visitor parties that we ran into out there are visitors from outside of Montezuma County. 44% are local residents. So that's quite a chunk, and maybe more than people expected. But also you have visitor parties of about 3 people. So it adds up, these visitor parties, it adds up to a lot of people visiting. So we'll keep rolling. Next slide, please. So in the next slide, we just converted our users into visitor parties because that's how our spending data is organized, how much people spend in restaurants, hotels, et cetera. Next slide. Well, even one more down. Okay. So then we asked people why they came. So that's an important, when you're doing economic impact analysis, if everybody was here for something other than outdoor recreation, it wouldn't be as strong of an argument for us to make that outdoor recreation is generating these impacts. But the fact is that there's a very strong correlation between why people came here and outdoor recreation and visiting heritage sites. It's kind of the main reason. The one that doesn't quite fit is visiting family and friends. Although they were out there, right? They were out there enough for us to have them answer that question, but that wasn't the main purpose. The rest of these, basically, you can attribute them to the fun things that Montezuma County has to offer. People are staying about over 4 days on average. Your visitors are staying over 4 days on average, which includes the day visitors, right? So the other thing we learned is that if people are staying the night, they're staying here. We only detected less than 5% of the people visitors that we encountered were staying in Durango, La Plata County. Nobody else was staying anywhere else, but we would press them and find out they were actually staying in Durango. Most people are staying in Cortez, Mancos, Dolores. Next slide. So the overall average of spending on all that is 551. So all visitor parties, the 2.9 people per party average per trip that they're doing, it's not per day, it's per visit, in Montezuma County, $551. That's the average. The overnight visitors are spending $802 on average, and the day visitors are spending over $100. That was a question, that was an open question at the beginning of this project. Are the dirtbags from Durango spending money? They are. They are. Mostly at the brewery, okay? So it's pretty predictable overall, but they are. It's like Zuma Foods, the brewery, they all knew exactly how much money they were going to spend at the brewery. They already knew what their orders were. They started telling me their orders. And so then Mesa Verde and Hovenweep, they do their own studies, right? So we actually just, instead of redoing that, we actually used their study and came up with their total spending from their facilities, and that Hovenweep one and the Mesa Verde one were both adjusted for spending that happened in Montezuma County, right? We have tons of visitors that stay in Durango that go to Mesa Verde. This only counts the ones that were spending in Montezuma County. Next slide. So now we're getting to the visitor parties and what their total spending was. So if we use all these metrics that we developed through this study, the answer is $78.5 million annually is what these visitors are spending. Next slide. So there's categories that we had to, we asked them what they were spending their money on. Lodging, so the overnight visitors have that lodging factor, which is 42%. If you go to the next slide, this is all of them, including the day visitors. That's a lesser slice of the pie, but it's still pretty diversified. The spending on average is pretty diversified across the retail sectors. So it's kind of touching all the retail sectors. Next slide, the Park Service did the same thing, so we're able to use those numbers from the Park Service. Next slide. And come up with the total annual visitor spending by sector. Next slide. Then we had to subtract out sales tax to run the economic impact model, but we were curious about that anyways. Like, how much does all this is retail, most of it's taxable sales, how much would it generate for the taxing entities here, which does not include Montezuma County. We have a countywide hospital district sales tax, which is, what is the percentage on that again? 0.5%?
0.4.
Yeah, so that's your countywide tax. And we combine the sales tax collections for the municipalities together just for display. And then you've got your lodger's tax. So it's $3.6 million in tax revenue that all that generates absent a county sales tax. So next slide, so 2 more slides down, the economic impact analysis. These are the multipliers that we used from RIMS 2 multipliers, from the BEA, the latest and greatest. Next slide. This is the spending that we had minus the sales tax times multipliers, total output, and total jobs. So total output of the spending is just over 100 million. Total jobs, FTEs, 724. Ongoing total jobs as a result of visitor spending associated with outdoor recreation, visitation, and those heritage assets.
How do
that we
you
listed.
calculate a job in comparison to the total output? How is that?
That's the RIMS 2 multipliers. If we back up just one more. Yeah, those RIMS 2 multipliers tell us the jobs per million in sales for Montezuma County. So it's, it's an economic model.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer.
Okay.
The Bureau of Economic Analysis. So now this is this is the one I was telling you about earlier. We asked the locals, once we asked them what they were doing and just the basics of their outing, we asked them whether or not, how long they've lived here, and if they had moved here when they could remember, then we asked them if outdoor recreation had anything to do with it. And so the reason we were asking that is because a huge chunk of your economic base, according to DOLA, it is fueled by households. So that's your biggest sector, because money comes into households. And the way economic base analysis works, it's always looking for the new money into the economy. Like, what's bringing new money? It's fine if we spend money and all that, great, fine. What economic base analysis is trying to figure out is where the new money is coming from. And so 41% of basically the new money and new wealth in this community is coming into the mailboxes and bank accounts of households. So really, the more households that you have, the bigger that sector is going to get. So that led us to this next question. Next slide, Travis, which I told you about, the intercept survey question that we asked them. And this is actually kind of slightly mislabeled, but I'll explain it to you. Essentially, 76% of the residents that we found, trailside and that sort of thing out there, it was outdoor recreation was one of the reasons, or the main reason, and 34% of them, it was the main reason. So if we take that 4,032 jobs that are associated with that residential sector, that's like hospital workers, people that work in the grocery stores, people that work at Big R, like people that are serving the residents. That's 4,032 jobs. And so theoretically, like almost 1,400 jobs are connected to residents that are here because of outdoor recreation. So that's more of a descriptive analysis. It's not quite as rigorous as the tourism dollar spending part of it, but it's there. Like, that's a real impact and something to keep in mind, I think, as the community goes forward and tries to balance all the interests with outdoor recreation. Like, the citizens, people living here, that's part of the economy. Next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the implementation plans, and then we'll be done with this presentation. You guys can ask questions and talk about this. So we did 5 implementation plans. That was in the plan, in the RFP, et cetera. And these are just the cover sheets for them. They're all kind of standardized plans. They're meant to be resources. You know, hopefully the community picks some of these up and champions them. They're all ideas that were born of the community, and they made the cut. These are the ones that made the cut when we got all the economic information, all the user data, and we're evaluating them on a matrix. So the first plan, implementation plan that we suggest is a marketing campaign focused on the canyons of the Ancients National Monument. So we cite some of the stats that we went over here, but basically what this boils down to is, you know, this is an opportunity to increase visitation to a really high quality, low use area. And BLM is on board with it. They you know, they want to, there's only certain places that they can even say exist under federal law, but they've got a list of those, right? And they've actually kind of expanded the list, like they've put painted hand on it, and they may be willing to do more of that, to advocate for more of that. But that my understanding from BLM is that they're really pretty much on board with this. They could use some more visitors down there, especially not Sand Canyon in April. I mean, Sand Canyon in April and May is busy. That's the only busyness you have down there. So that's one idea. The other idea, which is related to this, and very much, I think, related to what you were saying, Mr. Candelaria, about the people not knowing about the OHV trails in Canham, is a map. There's not a really good countywide map. In fact, the best map for outdoor recreation in Montezuma County is the county's GIS map viewer. That is hands down the best map. So this is kind of a project the county could take the lead on. The county is definitely better at GIS than anybody else in Southwest Colorado, I would say. Montezuma County, you got the best GIS anywhere. Been doing it longer, good people. So it's an opportunity for the county to kind of take the lead on one of these things, and that would be a county-wide map. And if I was channeling what some of the citizens said in the meetings last spring about this, I would say, be strategic about what you're mapping. You know, this is a public-facing map. Map the stuff that we want people to go see, not stuff that we don't want them to go see. That's what they would say. That's not the tourism promoter saying that. That's your citizens. So, let's see. The other thing, these two plans, implementation plans, are more physical planning, physical improvements. One of the things we were trying to figure out was at the beginning of this is we noticed that when we were doing the intercept surveys at the visitor center at Canham, people love that little half-a-mile walk up to the Escalante Pueblo. They love that. And then I went to Sand Canyon. I spent a lot of time just trying to get, it's slow going, getting surveys out there, and it's hot. So I spent a lot of time at the trailhead in Sand Canyon. And what was happening there was people were coming and they were wanting some kind of like Instagram moment. They were driving all the way out there and getting there and then realizing it was a trailhead and they had to hike and do something. So really what they were doing is they were like walking up about 150 feet and then coming back and like taking pictures of each other in front of the sign and then leaving. And that was happening like frequently. And so I kept thinking they really need like the Escalante Pueblo trail right here. Like they would do that if they knew there was something. So that got us onto this thing. We need something, we need these like almost like roadside attractions. The visitors really like that. And then we started poking around, and there's in an old gateway plan for 491 south Broadway. That's the right way to say that. It took me a little while to get that. There's a gateway there's an idea for a gateway there, which is right near Hawkins Preserve. And so we kind of sketched out this little idea. It's like, this is a perfect gateway, a little parking area, maybe a little trail to something easy to check out in Hawkins Preserve, right in Cortez. So Cortez kind of lacks that in-town, immediate outdoor access like Dolores has. To some degree, Mancos has it. Cortez doesn't have that as well. But it is like that area near Hawkins is amazing. It's incredible. We used to get lost out there when we were kids. So that's one of the ideas. The other idea came from watching this idea of trying to make improvements for hand launch watercraft, for canoes and kayaks and that kind of stuff that you just throw on the top of your car, not inspected. Currently, they don't inspect those things. They might start, I don't know, but currently, State Parks doesn't worry about it. But there's a lot of use. That's all the national and state visitation data, participation data tells us that that industry is on the rise. That part of outdoor recreation is growing. So we kind of thought, geez, in Dolores, they need a better access because last summer, the reservoir was high, like all summer, because there was so much water. So people were using the beach, you know, where the county road comes in from the cemetery right there at the corner, and they were just there all the time. We could go by there and intercept survey people. Every time we were coming through there, we'd get 4 or 5 people. And but that's not good when it's the low water year. The river is like, it's just the shallow Dolores River down to the reservoir. It doesn't help much to access for those paddlecraft. So even Dolores, which is right on the reservoir, is kind of hard to get there. It's like not that easy to launch a hand launch boat most seasons out there. And so that's kind of where this idea started. But then the Forest Service said, no way are we going to proliferate access to the reservoir, because CPW is going the exact opposite direction with that. So you got to work with our existing assets. And so the discussion led towards House Creek, and that there's very small launches there. I think there's less than 500 launches of inspected, of real big boats. So that's not a busy launch site. They could accommodate a lot more use. And it's in a little cove, and it's kind of a good place to make some of these improvements for hand launched paddlecraft. So that's the idea behind that. And then finally, the last implementation plan is about downtown. So when I was doing the interviews, you know, these expert outdoor recreation people in your community, most of them eventually would end up talking about downtown Cortez and downtown Mancos and downtown Dolores, and how the visitors, they see visitors with money in their pockets and nowhere to spend it. They can't figure out where to spend it. And so we actually looked into that. And what we found is that on average, Colorado-wide, outdoor recreation tourists spend $63 per person per trip on just leisure shopping. In Montezuma County, that number is $15. And our understanding of it is that that really is a supply side issue. You know, these are the same tourists that are everywhere that would spend the 63 if they could, but there isn't quite enough to do to spend it on. So this last idea is basically, I mean, you all have heard of business incubators and business accelerators and that sort of thing. This is an idea for that, but specifically oriented towards retail shopping. And you know, so a lot of incubators and accelerators programs are hard to get into. You got to have some really sweet idea that no one's ever thought of before. Tech, you know, a lot of them lean heavy toward technology and primary jobs and that sort of thing. Retail's just, it doesn't have that cool factor in that world right now, but it's super important. And I think for this community, it's one of the ways that you capture some of the value out of the use that's happening out there, you know, and that use is gonna grow regardless of what you do. So you might as well try to grow some businesses. And that's the final implementation plan that I would like to talk about, and probably the end of the presentation.
So, questions?
Questions, comments?
So I would agree with you on the GIS map viewer. I think that our department, and they started doing that, I think when Nolan got here, I think that was one of his first projects that he worked on. And it is, I use the map viewer pretty much weekly, if not daily, because I look at things all the time just as a commissioner, what's happening in Montezuma County. So somehow that would be easy to get out to people that know that they're wanting to get out there. And then secondly, from the BLM, I'm telling you, people don't go out there anymore because the trails that we used to go on as kids are not really trails that are accessible anymore. However, there are a lot of trails out there. I think it's just a matter of getting the word out. So I think that would be an easy, something easy for sure. And there are a lot of OHVs in this community. You know, some of the folks that don't want to go out and stand on a paddleboard or jump behind a boat and go skiing, they want to do other things. So for Sand Canyon, me personally, I hike out there all the time, but I'll only hike in February, March, and April. Those are the 3 months I use Sand Canyon, and I use it constantly because it's nice, it's dry, typically, and it's a temperature that's nice. For me, after April, it gets too hot, and I don't want to hike it at all. And there are a lot of miles, depending on which loop that you want to take. But Sand Canyon's pretty busy all the time, and I'm talking even way out because I hike all the trails. So I'm not sure that everybody's just doing a video moment and going up to the first rocks there, the first 200 feet, but kind of interesting. I guess really my question is how do we get, you said the average was $63 spent compared to $15 here in Montezuma County? That's huge. That percentage is.
For retail only, for just
Yeah,
silly
just
shopping.
for retail
Yeah.
only.
Yeah, you're in there with food and beverage and the necessities, but the optional stuff,
Retail shopping like trinkets, gifts, that
equipment,
kind of stuff.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you've got space, like, there's spaces to rent, you know, they may not be available all the time, but that's not, my understanding is that that's not a huge barrier. It is in some places. So sometimes these incubator, and they'll come, there's a space involved with it. And sometimes like cubbies, so you can test out,
Right.
you know, because if you sign a commercial lease, you got to buy insurance, and it's like a year minimum. And a lot of times you got to make investments in the space. So it's big investment.
big
to
investment.
Move into a downtown space with something you're not quite sure about. And that's the idea behind these
incubators.
these entrepreneurship platforms, is to sort of provide some cover as people try and figure out whether a business idea that they have is going to work, and whether they can take it. You know, you don't know if you're a capitalist until you're in it. Find out pretty quick.
Okay. Well, questions, guys?
No, I asked mine.
Question? I think it's a lot of data for us to look at now and really kind of absorb, but I do like the $551 per trip per tourist. I mean, that's pretty substantial, whether that's a 2-day trip, 3-day trip. I think you said 4 days was pretty much on average what they're spending here. So, I mean, that's good. So I think we'll look at it and then figure out where do we go from here? What are our next steps? So appreciate it. Thank you for the information.
You're welcome.
You bet, thank you.
Okay, Michelle, are you gonna tie the rest of this together?
Yeah. Travis, I emailed you a presentation. If you got it, great. If not, I can just talk. It's fine. Sweet, you got it. Okay. Well, I'm Michelle Furi, and I am the coalition coordinator for the Monolores Coalition, which is a regional partner to the Colorado Outdoor Partnership. And so the Colorado Outdoor Partnership was formed by executive order of the governor in 2020, and there are 17, I believe, regional partnerships across the state right now. And each one of those kind of vary on what their individual vision is or what their mission is, depending on what their challenges are in their region. And so where we are here, it's a little more rural, a little more agriculture-based. We don't have quite the same challenges as, say, the Front Range or Chaffee County. So we're looking at that a little bit differently. And this partnership is supported by Colorado Parks and Wildlife. It's really a partnership between Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Department of Natural Resources, the Colorado Natural Heritage Program, and GOCO. Those are kind of the overarching. And here in the region, obviously by the name Monolores, we're looking at Montezuma and Dolores counties, and the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, and any kind of surrounding areas, public lands that might be affiliated or affected by outdoor recreation and conservation in the area. And so I just want to point that out, that we're not just looking at outdoor recreation, we're looking at conservation as well. And so we've been working with an executive committee, of which James has been on representing Montezuma County. We've also got representation from Dolores County, City of Cortez, the towns of Mancos, Dolores, the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, National Park Service, CPW, and an agriculture representative, and tourism and destination management representative, working together. So we've been building some governing documents around that. I'm sorry, next slide. Okay, we can move to the next one. This is just an example of the organizations across the state that are working with the regional partners and the Colorado Outdoor Partnership. And I would say this is a non-exhaustive list. Next slide. And this is the vision for the Colorado Outdoor Partnership. And so the idea is that we're building a healthy economy and healthy lands, water, and wildlife, working farms and ranches, and we're improving recreation opportunities across the board for all. Okay, next slide. One of the ways that partnerships are working together is by really strong communication across agencies and organizations. And interestingly, we were just talking about GIS, so I have an example here of some geospatial tools that other regional partners are using that we have the opportunity to build out specific to this region. And that is really to help inform outdoor recreation and conservation planning efforts within agencies and within local organizations, okay, nonprofit organizations, advocates, even the outdoor rec industry. Okay, here's a map of the current regional partners. And you can see La Plata County's got one. We've got some gaps. Archuleta County is applying for one now. San Juan County's been a little bit adopted by the La Plata County one, which is called SCORE, if you've heard of that. San Miguel County is currently unengaged. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there, especially overlap as we're working in Dolores County. There's just a lot of overlap with partners in between Dolores and San Miguel County. So there's opportunity there to kind of work with them and bring them in to the fold. Okay, next slide. And so our process, one of the reasons that we really support and want to continue the work of Montezuma County's OREC plan is the process is really rooted in community. And so we want to hear from the communities across the region what they value most importantly, and then what are the challenges that they see now and into the future around outdoor recreation and conservation. And so engaging our communities, our government agencies, and the tribe are really important, okay? And we're currently applying for another larger community engagement plan. We'd like to continue the work that RPI has already done here and expand it and really propel that and leverage that really great data that he's put together here across the region to help inform a regional outdoor conservation and recreation plan. Okay, next slide. And how are we doing that? With a collaborative action. And so one of the things that we've been working on, what the executive committee has been working on, and we're just to a point where we finalized a charter, a governing document, is creating a coalition roundtable. And that roundtable has seats for all of the executive committee, which is about 13 people that I mentioned, the governments, the federal agencies, the state agencies, and a couple of at-large individuals, community members. The roundtable also will include about 17 different user groups, from adaptive use to backcountry hunting and angling, motorized use, non-motorized use. I'm not going to name them all. I can't think of all 17 off the top of my head, but we've got a pretty broad spectrum of representatives. And so then once that roundtable has been seated, and we'll get to that application process here in the next month or so, then what we're learning from the community, what we're learning from our stakeholders, of which I forgot to mention, I've got a list of maybe 120 local stakeholders that are being continually communicated with. They can then bring their topics of discussion to the roundtable, who can then convene, discuss, and then make recommendations to the local land managers or recreation planners. So that's really, thank you. So that's really just kind of in a quick nutshell what the Montelores Coalition is. And wanted to make sure that you understood that we're here and that we want to work with the county. We'd love to, like I said, James is on our executive committee, and at your pleasure, I would hope that he can continue to represent Montezuma County in that way, because he's been a really great contribution. And in turn, we want to be able to support this plan that you just learned about today, and can just have your continued collaboration in the future.
Okay. Quick question. I don't know if this is really better suited for Gabe or for you, but
Okay.
so going back to Canon, when we have such minimal visits out there annually, I mean that's pretty minimal. At what point in time, as this coalition works together, do you guys have a number, a projection of thinking about conservation also? What is that number? I mean, Mesa Verde's almost at 500,000 right now, and could that grow? I mean, I'm sure it can, or it could diminish to a certain degree, but it's probably pretty steady. I think the last time Casey was here, she said they were almost at their pre-COVID numbers, so they're getting real close to that 500,000 is probably somewhat stable.
Yeah.
But like for Canham, I mean, as far as the conservation side of it, what do you have a number? What would be a good?
I'll just say that certainly I don't have a number, but I think that's why this communication and collaboration is so important, and using these different tools to define what that is, and how the coalition roundtable can be so important, because what you're saying is something that a lot of the rest of the state is seeing and is kind of behind the curve on, and that's getting recreation under control, and balancing it with conservation, so that we're not loving our lands to death, and we're still creating economic opportunity. So those different agencies and partners and stakeholders together, making that community vision and creating that community-wide plan is really to help preserve our future.
Well, and you can, increase capacity with a parking lot. You create parking and you just took something that had very low capacity for visitation and made it 30 cars or whatever it is. And I think, so the capacity can change depending on what investments
Just
you're-
as simple
you're
as a
ma-
parking lot.
you're making.
because
But
we
that's
did
what you
see
mean by
that.
conservation, right? I just wanted to make sure.
And we saw that down at Sand Canyon when we approved those parking lots down there. And then we actually built one of them for the east parking lot where for horse trailers to park.
Oh, and they use that. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, they use
They
it a lot.
definitely use that.
Use it
And
a
that is
lot,
like,
so-
yeah, I think that Sand Canyon is a good example because, like you said, people go all over out there, and there's so many forks in the path that, you just make it past a couple of those intersections and you're like all by yourself. I mean, you'll see people every once in a while, but the real capacity limit there is that it's a 2-lane county road and there's nowhere to go. Like you can't pull off, you can't even pull off of that road really. So that parking area like took something that had pretty low capacity and gave it a lot more capacity. So those kind of investments can really change the game. And then there's certain parts of it, like I think, the way I think about what your question is, like there's certain parts of it where, of Canham and really Montezuma County in general, like Sage, there's places that are underutilized that could accommodate more use without really wrecking
Well,
anybody's
and that's what I'm
day.
thinking of because so Sand Canyon, the trailhead that starts off of County Road N, clear on the northern boundary. I think about it in my head now, and I've hiked that many times from there all the way down to County Road G at Sand Canyon, where you were probably at. Not a lot of people will do that because it's a pretty long,
Yeah.
it's a pretty long hike.
Yeah.
But we don't have any parking there at all. There's nothing but a trailhead there. I think we have our 60-foot easement of roadway, but I don't think, to my knowledge, James, unless it's changed in the last couple of years, I'm just kind of thinking, and if that's, parking is one of the things it is, because I'm not sure a lot of people even know that that's there.
Yeah.
Local people probably do, but just to get out there, and that still works into that conservation piece of it, but just thinking, so.
And signage, I don't want to keep brainstorming on this, I guess, but signage goes along with that. Like signage isn't a capacity increasing thing, but I don't know, in some ways it is. Because like if you've got signage, then you can tell people, they can look it up online, or you can have people tell them about this place, and then they can find it. You can have some confidence that if you put it on the map that we're talking about, or you put it on a brochure that that Mesa Verde Country's got, that they could actually find it.
Which
'Cause-
then that opens up to a lot of OHV trails on that upper end too,
Yeah,
on that north end.
yeah. Because it is
So-
not that easy to figure out there. It is not. You guys have it all like on lockdown,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
it isn't that easy to figure out.
Okay, that's all I had.
Good.
Okay, all right, well, thank you both.
you for your
I
time.
appreciate
Yeah,
it,
thank
and we have a lot to look over. Appreciate it, thanks. All right, moving right along then, we're gonna jump down to grants. First one, we have Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, Women, Infant, and Children Grant. Mr. Dobry, this is coming to us from Public Health.
Yes, this is a this is a grant that Bobby Locke has talked to you about a few times. Basically, the state public health CDPHE is just changing their process and changing the structure of the way this grant is structured and the application process. She is requesting $123,524. That fully covers the two positions that manage that, and she's including our indirect cost basically as the match for that program. Unless you have any other questions, that's about all I have for that one.
Pretty standard.
Yeah,
Pretty-
it's basically a
pretty
renewal of an
straightforward.
existing program, but the structure's slightly different.
Okay. Very good. Question, Commissioner? Okay. All right, Robert, next one.
The next one is the CDPHE Core Immunization Contract Amendment. That is an existing contract, and the amendment basically covers the next year, so it covers the next Colorado fiscal year, and that amount is $45,788. The state sent that amendment, and it should have been reassigned to Commissioner Candelaria, so he should have that contract in his email to sign and approve that one.
I get so many of these and then they expire and then yeah. Okay.
There shouldn't be, the expiration should be a few months out. Bobby specifically asked to make sure to give it a long lead time.
Okay.
And I think you asked me about that one, so you should have that one in your
Yeah,
email.
I did.
But yeah, so I just wanted to remind you to tomorrow, assuming that you approve this, to authorize signature as well.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last one that I have, there is a Colorado Secretary of State election security grant that funds certain items related to both physical and digital security. In talking with Kim and her team, as well as Jim McLean in IT, we came up with a list of priorities, and I'm going to have a call later this week and make sure that we can apply for all of them, but it's possible that one or more of them may drop off the list. But the total amount we would like to request is $35,940.53, and this is a 100% paid grant. There's no matching funds or anything. So,
Okay. Question?
No.
Okay.
okay,
All right,
that's all I
thanks.
have.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, next we're going to have a first quarter financial update from Faedra. Come on down. Kind of let us know how all of our departments are doing after the first quarter has expired.
So, a snapshot is the detail. Travis, if you want to bring up there you go. So that's general fund. The detail, if you need it, is accompanying that. Oh, sorry. If you go down, so 25% of the years elapsed when I did these numbers. So if you're going down, if you have specific questions, just let me know, but we'll just look at yours at the top, and it says you've expended 30%. And that reason, because a lot of the dues and insurance, things that subscriptions, we have to pay those up front. So the first quarter, a lot of the departments do go over that 25% because those expenses come up the front of the year, so we take care of those. And that is in the case of the commissioner's budget. If you go down to the jail, they're a little bit over, and they have an insurance, and that comes out at the beginning of the year. Going down to a grant that had some expenditures that was in 2023 that were paid at the beginning of 2024. That does happen. That's a time difference there. Let's see, the gaming grant. We had the dispatch fees up front, so that took a majority of that budget. The sheriff's office.
So that gaming grant, Faedra, backing up
Yes.
just a little bit.
I'm sorry.
That 87% that's expended, because we took the 140,377
Yes.
out for the dispatch fees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yes.
yeah, that's why it looks so skewed, but really there's not a lot left to come out of that.
No, there's not.
Gaming grant budget at all. So
Yeah.
although it looks way over the 25%, there's probably not going to be a lot left to take out of that one at all.
No, there's not. And then the sheriff's office, they had some software to pay for at the beginning of the year. And they're slightly over. Going down to the fairgrounds, and they had that solar project. And that was paid for at the beginning of the year, and so that is showing 49% because that was a big project in his budget.
And we're still
oh.
working on a reimbursement grant for that too, right, Robert? Or,
I believe
because,
you've already asked for the.
We've been fully reimbursed for
Okay.
the state grant. I'm still working on the full reimbursement for our 25% that the
matching,
county
okay.
paid. Yeah, the matching piece.
all right.
So maintenance, they have leases for the solar that come out at the beginning of the year, so that put him a little over. Administration, let me see this. I believe it's software, and then we have some upfront at the beginning of the year also for office expenses. Let's see the detail really quick. And that's exactly, and we had a subscription that comes out at the beginning. Going down to miscellaneous. In miscellaneous, this is where we have the commissioners asks by some community entities, and that comes out at the very beginning of the year, so that's why you see that at 80%. And it's also where the insurance, the work comp, all of those things are paid from. So that's all paid in January, so that comes out at the first quarter. And for the natural resources, public lands, his is slightly over because he does have a couple grants. So they went a little bit over expenses. Do you have any questions so far?
No.
Okay, going down to the GIS, they have a subscription that comes out, so they're a little over. Well, I skipped IT. IT has taken over majority of the maintenance contracts, subscriptions for any software. So a lot of that budget comes out at the very beginning. He has numerous things to pay for at the beginning.
He took over all the software,
All
correct?
not
So,
all county software, but a majority of that, yes. There are still some smaller ones that the departments do pay out of their account. Going down, who else do we got here? Law Enforcement Authority. That, I believe, was also subscription. Let's see.
so the picture that we're looking at right now, the total's 30% basically.
Yes.
So we're 5% over, but a
Right.
lot of those are because of the
The
dues,
upfront.
subscriptions,
Yes.
insurance that we all pay January at the beginning of the year. So our next 6 month, or
That
in
will give
July
you-
when we do it, it'll give us a better picture of where we're at.
Yep.
Okay.
The revenue is at 17.6, and that is because we have still not received all the property tax. We usually don't receive all those funds till between April and June.
Mhm.
So, and then we have federal mineral lease, and we have, what else do we have? Severance tax, that doesn't come in till the fall. So a lot of our revenue is a little bit, comes in a little bit later. And
When
then
do we get our SRS, and doesn't,
That one, I believe it's
Shouldn't we be
not
getting that, like-
until you know what, I didn't check on that, but I thought it was the fall.
is it the fall? I thought it was in the, like, really quick. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm
'cause
wrong.
Well, we had interviews with all the districts in the summer, wasn't it? When we asked them.
Yeah, maybe it was in the
That
summer.
was the only one I
Maybe-
did not check on to see the date. when we
We'll
used to do
check
that,
on
but, I have not seen anything from the treasurer yet, and it had not been
It could have been
received since
early fall.
April, so I
Yes,
think it was.
It was, because we were talking to them when they were just going
Just
back to
getting ready,
school.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
because
it's
I wanted to
August.
see, I
Yeah.
finalized the report in October, I believe, so I think it was the fall.
Okay.
Faedra,
Yes,
animal control.
that is for the animal shelter?
That's what we pay to the city.
The city.
For
Okay.
use
Yes.
of the shelter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. think that's it for general fund. The other funds are pretty on track also. Road and Bridge, they're at 26, 27, but that is also because they have upfront insurance costs to pay for in the first quarter. The health is, they're at 22, capital fund 8, administration fund 1, landfill 14.9, so they're all on track. There's nothing really outstanding.
Pretty much on track right
Yep,
now after the
everyone's on-
first
yep.
quarter.
Yes.
So when we do this again after the 6 months have expired, 50% of the year, we'll have a better idea of kind of where we're at, looking at the numbers. But just a generalization so that you guys have an idea of kind of where we're at and on track. Well, it shows we're 5% over, but a lot of that's because of upfront dues, subscriptions, and fees. So questions for Faedra?
No, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Faedra. All right, last bullet point on the agenda. Mr. Mel, come on down.
All right. So Consci was on the site, started excavation on the landfill. They excavated probably 150 feet of the trench to expose the liner. We had a survey bust. The survey said that it was down 10 feet, it was only down 4. So they were looking at the project and determined that there was a lot more soil to be removed than was on the bid. So they stopped and left the site while I was gone to Denver, and called in their survey. They came back with an estimate, which was sent to us, I think Travis has that, of 137,000 cubic yards of soil to be moved. So we had our surveyor go back in and check it, and that's about twice what it is. Randy Bouet went in and did a topo map of the cell that needs to be excavated, and he come back with 82,000 cubic yards of soil. So Consci came back with a rebid on this, and they added so much money to this, it's going to be, in my opinion, way over our budget to do.
So let me jump in here just a little bit, and Travis, you can too. Travis and I went and looked at this. We talked to Mel on Friday after we got this. And if you add up those numbers, I'm going to tell you you're just a little over $1 million. So with what we awarded would be about 1.85
Oh yeah, almost
million,
1.9.
1.9 million, which is substantially, like I said, we're about $1 million over what we had approved. So I think what what Mel's recommendation, and I would concur with it after looking at these costs here, is that we terminate the contract. That was why we kind of got with Ian, because we're so far over budget now. We're going to have to figure out a way to do it on our own. And Mel said if they pick at it, chip at it, you know, it's going to take a year to do it, but we could probably have it done by the middle of next summer or
Yeah, it's
late
not
next
an
summer.
issue with that. We can have that soil moved by the spring of next year. I mean, that 82,000 yards, that's not that much. We moved more than that building the Carver Field last summer. So, I mean, we can get it done for a whole lot cheaper than this.
So we have enough money in there to go ahead and get our liners purchased out of those bid items, and then we just pay the contractor, get out of this for the mobilization costs, not what you're seeing here, but which was on the previous bid, the stay they had for standby time, and
Survey,
the survey to resolve this. And I think we added it up, Travis, we were like around 60,000?
it was a little over 60,000.
Just a little over 60,000. So I think if I'm heard you right on Friday, it's basically we just terminate this contract because there's no way we can dig up another $1 million.
It just shouldn't cost that much to move that much soil.
No. So it'd put us about 1.9 million, which is substantially
almost double the
Over.
cost of what we'd anticipated.
It's more
It's
than
more than
double.
double.
More than double?
More than double,
I think we have 850.
800?
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is over $1 million ad, so we don't, with our conversation with Ian Friday, we can get out of the contract, pay the fees that we have to pay up front, and then be done with it. So that's, obviously can't make the decision today, but that's
Yeah.
kind of where we're at as far as where we're at for Cell 5. Have I left anything out?
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to try and get Cell 5 done this year, nobody knows what this election's gonna do, what it's gonna do to the cost of the liners and stuff like that. We have the room to postpone it, especially if we can get our CQA done on the Carver Field, which I've already contacted CDPHE on. They'll be getting to it soon, so hopefully we'll be composting on the pad here within a month or so. And that frees up all of Cell 1, 2A, 2B, 3, and 4. And they all have to go up over 20 feet, so we have time.
Correct, but I think the ask was still to be able to purchase the liner so that we have it at this year's cost, and the rest of it, we just chip at we just
Correct. And
work
we've already
on the
bought
dirt
the-
ourselves.
Yeah, we've already got the gravel paid for and on site as well, so.
So I think the recommendation
Yeah.
is to terminate this contract, and we're just gonna have to do it ourselves and wait.
That's
A
my
year.
opinion.
Question?
No. Pretty simple, really.
Question?
Is it simple to terminate this contract?
I think it depends on what the contractor says, quite frankly.
I haven't heard back from them yet. I haven't received an email or anything as of before I came to the meeting, so.
All right. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Anything else, Commissioner? All right. Well, then, that is our last bullet point on our agenda, so this workshop is ended. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mel.